Manson has been serving his time at this prison in Vacaville, California, isolated from his fellow inmates. Manson's first television interview since the murders begins badly.
No, I told you I'm not going to sit in that damn chair, man. I'll stand here and talk with the dude.
Manson refuses to sit in the chair provided. He says he's not going to look up to anyone. But finally, Tom Snyder of the National Broadcasting Company asks his first question.
You know, you were sentenced to the gas chamber and then they modified the death penalty. Were you happy when that was done?
Was I happy when what was done?
When you found out that you weren't going to the gas chamber.
You're talking about dying. Now, it gets me nervous.
Why?
Did you have any thoughts about something? Was you wanting to go anywhere?
Charles Manson was born on November 12, 1934, to 16-year-old Kathleen Manson Bauer-Cavender, née Maddox, in the University of Cincinnati Academic Health Center in Cincinnati, Ohio. He was first named no-name Maddox. Within weeks, he was called Charles Mills Maddox. Manson's biological father appears to have been Colonel Walker Henderson Scott Sr., from Kentucky, against whom Kathleen Maddox filed a paternity suit that resulted in an agreed judgment in 1937. This means that Charles's dad is also his grandfather. Manson may never have known his biological father. Scott worked intermittently in local mills, and also had a local reputation as a con artist. He allowed Maddox to believe he was an Army colonel, although colonel was merely his given name. When Maddox told Scott she was pregnant, he told her he had been called away on Army business. After several months she realized he had no intention of returning. In August 1934, before Manson's birth, Maddox married William Eugene Manson, whose occupation was listed on Charles's birth certificate as a laborer at a dry cleaning business. Maddox went on drinking sprees for days at a time with her brother Luther, leaving Charles with a variety of babysitters. They were divorced on April 30, 1937, when a court accepted Manson's charge of gross neglect of duty.
Were you happy when you found out you weren't going to go to the gas chamber, Charles?
I knew I wasn't going to go to the gas chamber because I hadn't done anything wrong.
On August 1, 1939, Maddox and Luther's girlfriend, Julia Vickers, spent the evening drinking with Frank Martin, a new acquaintance who appeared to be wealthy. Maddox and Vickers decided to rob him, and Maddox phoned her brother to help. They were incompetent thieves, and were found and arrested within hours. At the trial 7 weeks later, Luther was sentenced to 10 years in prison, and Kathleen was sentenced to 5 years. Manson was placed in the home of an aunt and uncle in McCumshan, West Virginia. His mother was paroled in 1942. Manson later characterized the first weeks after she returned from prison as the happiest time in his life. Manson's family moved to Charleston, West Virginia, where Manson continually played truant and his mother spent her evenings drinking. She was arrested for grand larceny, but not convicted. After moving to Indianapolis, Maddox started attending Alcoholics Anonymous meetings where she met an alcoholic man named Lewis, whom she married in August 1943. As well as constantly playing truant, Manson began stealing from stores and his home. In 1947, Maddox looked for a temporary foster home for Manson, but she was unable to find a suitable one. She decided to send him to the Gibault School for Boys in Terre Haute, Indiana, a school for male delinquents run by Catholic priests. Manson soon fled home to his mother, but she took him back to the school. He spent Christmas 1947 in McCumshan, at his aunt and uncle's house, where he was caught stealing a gun.
You scared to die?
Sometimes I feel I'm scared to live. Living is what scares me. Dying is easy. How long have I been in jail? 34 years? 34 years, so...
Out of 47, you've been here 34.
I've been in jail, prison, a long time, all my life. I was raised up in here. So I understand jail. So I understand myself and I can deal with that. I sit in my cell and I do my number like a convict does his number.
Manson returned to Gibalt but ran away to Indianapolis 10 months later. Instead of returning to his mother, he rented a room and supported himself by burgling stores at night. He was eventually caught, and a sympathetic judge sent him to Boys Town, a juvenile facility in Omaha, Nebraska. After 4 days, he and a student named Blackie Nielsen stole a car and somehow obtained a gun. It is still not known how they obtained it. They used it to rob a grocery store and a casino, as they made their way to the home of Nielsen's uncle in Peoria, Illinois. Nielsen's uncle was a professional thief, and when the boys arrived he apparently took them on as apprentices. Manson was arrested 2 weeks later during a nighttime raid on a Peoria store. In the investigation that followed, he was linked to his 2 earlier armed robberies. He was sent to the Indiana Boys School, a strict reform school. He later claimed that other students raped him with the encouragement of a staff member. That's right. Charles Manson was also raped by other kids his age when he was still very young. Manson developed a self-defense technique he later called the insane game. When he was physically unable to defend himself he would screech, grimace and wave his arms to convince aggressors that he was insane. After a number of failed attempts, he escaped with 2 other boys in February 1951.
But there's different colors on different people's backs doing different things. It's a different world. I love the world I live in too, just like Regan loves the world he lives in.
You love the world you live in.
Most assuredly, it's me.
You love all the pain that you've caused people, all the anguish you've caused.
I don't know pain. I don't know pain. I have no depth of pain. I have no depth of suffering. I don't know ridicule. I don't know all the bad things. I haven't been punished by you all my life since I was 10 years old. I've been in every reform school you got across the country and used to lay down and have to get my ass whipped till I couldn't walk. Tell me about some pain.
And that's our fault. That's all those people
No
want.
fault. Make strong, good pain. Understand pain. Not bad. Pain's not bad. It's good. It teaches you things.
On a psychiatrist's recommendation, Manson was transferred in October 1951 to Natural Bridge Honor Camp, a minimum security institution. On arrival he was given aptitude tests. He was illiterate, and his IQ was 109, while the national average was at 100. His caseworker deemed him aggressively antisocial. His aunt visited him and told administrators she would let him stay at her house and would help him find work. Manson had a parole hearing scheduled for February 1952. However, in January, he was caught raping a boy at knife point. Manson was transferred to the Federal Reformatory in Petersburg, Virginia. There he committed a further 8 serious disciplinary offenses, 3 involving homosexual acts. He was then moved to a maximum security reformatory at Chillicothe, Ohio, where he was expected to remain until his release on his 21st birthday in November 1955. Good behavior led to an early release in May 1954, to live with his aunt and uncle in Mkmshin. In January 1955, Manson married a hospital waitress named Rosalie Jean Willis. Around October, about 3 months after he and his pregnant wife arrived in Los Angeles in a car he had stolen in Ohio, Manson was again charged with a federal crime for taking the vehicle across state lines. After a psychiatric evaluation, he was given 5 years probation. Manson's failure to appear at a Los Angeles hearing on an identical charge filed in Florida resulted in his March 1956 arrest in Indianapolis. His probation was revoked. He was sentenced to 3 years imprisonment at Terminal Island, San Pedro, California. While Manson was in prison, Rosalie gave birth to their son Charles Manson Jr. During his first year at Terminal Island, Manson received visits from Rosalie and his mother, who were now living together in Los Angeles. In March 1957, when the visits from his wife ceased, his mother informed him Rosalie was living with another man. Less than 2 weeks before a scheduled parole hearing, Manson tried to escape by stealing a car. He was given 5 years probation and his parole was denied.
It teaches you things, like when you put your hand in fire, oh, you know not to do that again. Yeah, I understand that.
Written accounts indicate that you told the authorities, don't let me out. I can't cope with the outside world. Do you have a recollection of that? And
You make a desperate plea out of something, man. There's no desperate plea out of it. I say I can't handle the maniacs outside. Let me back in.
I didn't use the word desperate. That's your word, Charles.
Yeah, well, your inflection and your voice tones were implications there.
Well,
Manson received 5 years parole in September 1958, the same year in which Rosalie received a decree of divorce. By November, he was pimping a 16-year-old girl and was receiving additional support from a girl with wealthy parents. In September 1959, he pleaded guilty to a charge of attempting to cash a forged U.S. Treasury check, which he claimed to have stolen from a mailbox. The latter charge was later dropped. He received a 10-year suspended sentence and probation after a young woman named Leona, who had an arrest record for prostitution, made a tearful plea before the court that she and Manson were deeply in love, and would marry if Charlie were freed. Before the year's end, the woman did marry Manson, possibly so she would not be required to testify against him.
you use the word maniacs on the outside. How are you different from the maniacs on the outside? And why do you call them maniacs? Because you know something, they think you are one.
Yeah, it would reflect. If you hold the negative up to the light, you don't see the light, you just see the negative. So I'm a reflection of your negative, there's no doubt about that, and I can handle that also. I've been handling, ain't I?
I don't know, have you?
Well, I've been up and down these damn hallways, in and out of these nut wards for the last 10 years. You think you could follow that act? I'm playing for my life. You working for money.
Manson took Leona and another woman to New Mexico for purposes of prostitution, resulting in him being held and questioned for violating the Mann Act. Though he was released, Manson correctly suspected that the investigation had not ended. When he disappeared in violation of his probation, a bench warrant was issued. An indictment for violation of the Mann Act followed in April 1960. When one of the women was arrested for prostitution, Manson was arrested in June in Laredo, Texas, and was returned to Los Angeles. For violating his probation on the check cashing charge, he was ordered to serve his 10-year sentence. In June 1966, Manson was sent for the second time to Terminal Island in preparation for early release. By the time of his release day on March 21, 1967, he had spent more than half of his 32 years in prisons and other institutions. This was mainly because he had broken federal laws. Federal sentences were, and remain, much more severe than state sentences for many of the same offenses. Telling the authorities that prison had become his home, he requested permission to stay. Upon his release from prison on March 21, 1967, Charles Manson received permission to move to San Francisco, where, with the help of a prison acquaintance, he moved into an apartment in Berkeley. In prison, bank robber Alvin Karpis had taught Manson to play the steel guitar. Living mostly by begging, Manson soon got to know Mary Brunner, a 23-year-old graduate of the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Brunner was working as a library assistant at the University of California, Berkeley, and Manson moved in with her. According to a second-hand account, he overcame her resistance to his bringing other women to live with them. Before long, they were sharing Brunner's residence with 18 other women.
When you say you're playing for your life, am I to assume that you think that someday you're going to get out of here?
Get out of here. Get out of here. Where would I go now? See.
What would you do if you got out of here?
If I got out of here.
What if they said to you tomorrow morning, Charles, hey, listen, you're free. You can go wherever you want to go. Do whatever you want to do. What would you do?
I'll probably go out front on the grass and sit down.
The question is, should Manson ever go free? It's 10 years now since he and his 3 female accomplices, virtually robots under his control, were convicted of murder. On August the 9th, 1969, they murdered actress Sharon Tate and 4 other people in Los Angeles. The following night, there were 2 more victims, Lino and Rosemary LaBianca. In court, Manson was also charged with 2 more mutilation murders. Ranch hand Donald Shea was beheaded, and musician Gary Heineman had his ear cut off.
Manson established himself as a guru in San Francisco's Haight-Ashbury district, which during 1967's Summer of Love was emerging as the signature hippie locale. Manson appeared to have borrowed his philosophy from the Process Church of the Final Judgment, whose members believed Satan would become reconciled to Christ and they would come together at the end of the world to judge humanity. Manson soon had the first of his groups of followers, which have been called the Manson family, most of them female. Manson taught his followers that they were the reincarnation of the original Christians, and that the Romans were the establishment. He strongly implied that he was Christ. He often told a story envisioning himself on the cross with the nails in his feet and hands. Sometime around 1967, he began using the alias Charles Willis Manson. He often said it very slowly, implying that his will was the same as that of the Son of Man. In 1967, Brunner had become pregnant by Manson and, on April 15, 1968, gave birth to a son she named Valentine Michael, often nicknamed Boo Bear. The events that would culminate in the murders were set in motion in late spring 1968, when, by some accounts, Dennis Wilson of the Beach Boys picked up family women Patricia Krenwinkel and Ella Jo Bailey when they were hitchhiking and brought them to his Pacific Palisades house for a few hours. He returned home in the early hours of the following morning from a night recording session and was greeted by Manson in the driveway, who emerged from the house. Uncomfortable, Wilson asked the stranger whether he intended to hurt him. Manson assured him that he had no such intent and began kissing Wilson's feet. Inside the house, Wilson discovered 12 strangers, mostly women. Gary Allen Hinman was a music teacher and Ph.D. student at UCLA. At some point in the late 1960s he befriended members of the Manson family, allowing some to stay at his home on occasion. Manson was under the impression that Hinman had considerable stocks and bonds and owned his property. Believing that he was wealthy, Manson sent family members Bobby Beausoleil, Mary Brunner and Susan Atkins to Hinman's home on July 25, 1969 to convince Gary to join the family and turn over the assets Manson thought Hinman had inherited. The 3 held the uncooperative Hinman hostage for 2 days, during which time Manson showed up with a sword and slashed his ear. After that, Beausoleil stabbed Hinman to death, allegedly on Manson's instruction. Before leaving the Topanga Canyon residence, Beausoleil or one of the women used Hinman's blood to write "Political Piggy" on the wall and to draw a panther paw, a Black Panther symbol. Gary Hinman became the first victim of the Manson family.
So is he coming or what?
He'll be here.
I hope. He's gonna straighten this all out.
He wants his money.
What money, man?
He says you have money. He wants it.
Bobby, if I had any freaking money, I would have given it to you the first time you hit me. All right? You know?
Charlie, hey, what's going on, man? Hey.
Here's what you're gonna do, unless you want to lose your other ear. What's that? You're gonna sign over everything you have to us. Now, what is everything? Everything means everything, everywhere you happen to look. Oh, there's a house. That must be part of everything. We'll take that. Is that a car outside? We'll take that, too. Everything. Now, I want that money that you owe me. And if you don't pay me what you owe me, then I'll pay you what you owe me. Okay. Okay. Okay.
Okay. Here, take it. That's it. That's the house. That's the car. That's all I got. I swear. There's no money. That's it, man. Oh.
We ain't gonna get nothing out of him. Well, we can't just leave him there. He'll call the police.
Well, you know what to do.
According to some accounts, Manson and his family may have been responsible for as many as 35 killings.
If you got out of here, there are a lot of people who think you'd go start killing people again.
Again? Well, you guys are misinformed. I haven't killed anyone. I didn't break the law. The judge knew that. But the people didn't want to hear it. The judge knew it. He washed his hands. He said, I know it, but what can I do? People want this.
The judge never said that.
Yeah.
Judge never said
That's
that.
what Older said.
No, judge didn't say that.
He got off and shook their hands, didn't he? You're so white and pure.
Judge didn't say you were innocent.
Are you innocent?
Innocent of what?
Well, that's what I'm saying.
None of us are innocent.
Yeah, just because you're convicted in a courtroom doesn't mean you're guilty of something.
What does mean you're guilty?
When you know you're guilty.
What about Shay?
What about him?
Well, what about him?
He got killed.
Well, the word is you killed him.
Word is that you're an old woman. Word is you have turkey in the sky. Word is, I don't know what word is. Somebody else tell you that. I didn't tell you that.
Did you kill Shay?
Hell no.
Did you cut Hinman's ear off?
Hell yes.
Why, how'd that feel when you cut his ear off?
What did it feel like?
Yeah.
Well, I had done what he said for about 20 years. I'd done everything he told me to do. And I got to thinking, now, why don't this guy do something I tell him to do? And he said, no. I said, well, how comes I'm always doing what you tell me to do, but then you never do what I say do?
In magazine interviews of 1981 and 1998 to 1999, Beausoleil said he went to Hinman's to recover money paid to Hinman for drugs that had supposedly been bad. He added that Brunner and Atkins, unaware of his intent, went along merely to visit Hinman. Atkins, in her 1977 autobiography, wrote that Manson directly told Beausoleil, Brunner, and her to go to Hinman's and get the supposed inheritance of $21,000. She said that 2 days earlier Manson had told her privately that, if she wanted to do something important, she could kill Hinman and get his money. Beausoleil was arrested on August 6, 1969, after he was caught driving Hinman's car. Police found the murder weapon in the tire well. 2 days later Manson told family members at Spahn Ranch, now is the time for helter-skelter. On the night of August 8, 1969, Manson directed Watson to take Susan Atkins, Linda Kasabian, and Patricia Krenwinkel to Melcher's former home at 10050 Kilo Drive in Los Angeles and kill everyone there. The home had only recently been rented to celebrity couple Sharon Tate and director Roman Polanski. Polanski was away in Europe working on A Day at the Beach, which he would later end up only producing. Manson told the three women to do as Watson told them. The family members proceeded to kill the 5 people they found: actress Sharon Tate, 8.5 months pregnant, who was living there at the time, Jay Sebring, Abigail Folger, and Wojtek Frykowski, who were visiting her, and Stephen Parent, who had been visiting the caretaker of the home. Atkins wrote "Pig" with Tate's blood on the front door as they left. The murders created a nationwide sensation. This night had a horrific impact on everybody. As you can imagine, everybody in that house that night, including Tate and her baby inside her, were killed brutally. This crime is what helped Charles Manson and the Manson family grow in popularity, and it's absolutely disgusting and unhuman to do what they did that night. Roman, the director and husband of Tate, interrupted his movie, and was absolutely crushed by the news. His pregnant wife had been murdered while he wasn't there. It was a horrifying, disturbing and awful night.
And he said, well, blah, blah, blah. So I said, now you do what I say. And he said, no. I said, you do exactly what I say. And he said, no. I'm telling you. I'm not asking you. I'm telling you. You do exactly what I say. And that's about the extent of it. All this occult, all that hocus pocus stuff that you guys are playing, I don't know nothing about all that.
You know nothing about something called Helter Skelter. Tell me, Charles, I don't know.
It's worse than a fairy tale.
It's a fairy tale.
It's a comedy. It's a comedy tragedy.
The body of Sharon Tate is make-believe.
That's make-believe.
Make-believe, yeah.
That's make-believe to the people that went in there and did what they did.
Mm-hmm. And who were those people?
But you
know who they were.
Sure I know who they were.
They were with you at the Spahn Ranch. They were part of this thing called, if not the Manson family or the Manson cult, the Manson Ranch. Call it what you will.
So then, what? You dealt the hand down there in L.A. You and that press. You dealt the hand. You put me on Life magazine, had me convicted before I walked in the courtroom. You had what people wanted to buy, and when they wanted to buy it, they didn't give a damn if they had to convict a district attorney. They'd have convicted the whole building to get that dollar bill going there. They had big bucks going there. He made 27 million, 100 billion. I'm bumming $10, $15 from my friend here.
The next night of August 9, 1969, 6 family members, Leslie Van Houten, Steve Clem Grogan, and the 4 from the previous night, drove out on Manson's orders. Displeased by the panic of the victims at Kilo Drive, Manson accompanied the 6, to show them how to do it. After a few hours' ride, in which he considered a number of murders and even attempted one of them, Manson gave Kasabian directions that brought the group to 3301 Waverly Drive. This was the home of supermarket executive Lino LaBianca and his wife, Rosemary, a dress shop co-owner. Located in the Los Feliz section of Los Angeles, it was next door to a house at which Manson and family members had attended a party the previous year. According to Atkins and Kasabian, Manson disappeared up the driveway and returned to say he had tied up the house's occupants. He then sent Watson up with Krenwinkel and Van Houten. In his autobiography, Watson stated that having gone up alone, Manson returned to take him up to the house with him. After Manson pointed out a sleeping man through a window, the 2 of them entered through the unlocked back door. Watson added at trial, he went along with the women's account, which he figured made him look that much less responsible. As Watson related it, Manson roused the sleeping Lino LaBianca from the couch at gunpoint and had Watson bind his hands with a leather thong. After Rosemary was brought briefly into the living room from the bedroom, Watson followed Manson's instructions to cover the couple's heads with pillowcases. He bound these in place with lamp cords. Manson left, sending Krenwinkel and Van Houten into the house with instructions that the couple be killed. Before leaving Spahn Ranch, Watson had complained to Manson of the inadequacy of the previous night's weapons. Now, sending the women from the kitchen to the bedroom to which Rosemary LaBianca had been returned, he went to the living room and began stabbing Leno LaBianca with a chrome-plated bayonet. The first thrust went into the man's throat. Sounds of a scuffle in the bedroom drew Watson there to discover Rosemary LaBianca keeping the women at bay by swinging the lamp tied to her neck. After subduing her with several stabs of the bayonet, he returned to the living room and resumed attacking Leno, whom he stabbed a total of 12 times with the bayonet. After this attack, the word "war" was carved into his abdomen by a perpetrator. Returning to the bedroom, Watson found Krenwinkel stabbing Rosemary LaBianca with a knife from the LaBianca kitchen. Heeding Manson's instruction to make sure each of the women played a part, Watson told Van Houten to stab Mrs. LaBianca too. She did, stabbing her approximately 16 times in the back and the exposed buttocks. At trial, Van Houten would claim, uncertainly, that Rosemary LaBianca was dead when she stabbed her. Evidence showed that many of Mrs. LaBianca's 41 stab wounds had, in fact, been inflicted post-mortem. While Watson cleaned off the bayonet and showered, Krenwinkel wrote "Rise and Death to Pigs" on the walls and "Helter Skelter" on the refrigerator door, all in LaBianca's blood. She gave Leno LaBianca 14 puncture wounds with an ivory-handled, two-tined carving fork, which she left jutting out of his stomach. She also planted a steak knife in his throat. Meanwhile, hoping for a double crime, Manson had gone on to direct Kasabian to drive to the Venice home of an actor acquaintance of hers, another Piggy. Depositing the other 3 family members who had departed Spahn with him that evening at the man's apartment building, Manson drove back to Spahn Ranch, leaving them and the LaBianca killers to hitchhike home. Kasabian thwarted this murder by deliberately knocking on the wrong apartment door and waking a stranger. As the group abandoned the murder plan and left, Atkins defecated in the stairwell.
Here's another newspaper account that you can now speak to since you haven't done it before. That on the night following the killings at the house on Cielo Drive in Los Angeles, you accompanied 4 people to a home occupied by Mr. and Mrs. Leo LaBianca.
Yeah.
That you went inside that house and you tied them up and assured them that they were not going to be hurt. That you went back outside and sent Kasabian and Krenwinkel and Watson and Atkins inside the house to kill them. True or false? Did you do that? Chair's getting hot, huh? Did you do that?
Did I kill anyone?
No. Did you go in and tie up the LaBiancas that night? Very simple question.
That night.
August 10th, 1969.
That night. August the 10th,
Did you?
1969.
Why duck it? Why dodge it? Why not answer it yes or no once and for all? Put it behind you.
Did I kill anyone?
Did you tie up the LaBiancas?
The Tate murders became national news on August 9, 1969. The Polanski's housekeeper, Winifred Chapman, had arrived for work that morning and discovered the murder scene. On August 10, detectives of the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, which had jurisdiction in the Hinman case, informed the LAPD detectives assigned to the Tate case of the bloody rioting at the Hinman house. Thinking the Tate murders were a consequence of a drug transaction, the Tate team ignored this and the crime's other similarities. The Tate autopsies were underway and the LaBianca bodies were yet to be discovered. Stephen Parent, the shooting victim in the Tate driveway, was determined to have been an acquaintance of William Garretson, who lived in the guest house. Garretson was a young man hired by Rudy Altobelli to take care of the property while Altobelli was away. As the killers arrived, Parent had been leaving Kilo Drive, after a visit to Garretson. Held briefly as a Tate suspect, Garretson told police he had neither seen nor heard anything on the murder night. He was released on August 11, 1969, after undergoing a polygraph examination that indicated he had not been involved in the crimes. Interviewed decades later, he stated he had, in fact, witnessed a portion of the murders, as the examination suggested. Garretson died in August 2016. The LaBianca crime scene was discovered at about 10:30 p.m. on August 10, approximately 19 hours after the murders were committed. 15-year-old Frank Struthers, Rosemary's son from a prior marriage and Lino's stepson, returned from a camping trip and was disturbed by seeing all of the window shades of his home drawn and by the fact that his stepfather's speedboat was still attached to the family car, which was parked in the driveway. He called his older sister and her boyfriend. The boyfriend, Joe Dorgan, accompanied the younger Struthers into the home and discovered Lino's body. Rosemary's body was found by investigating police officers.
Atkins testified you did.
That's what Susie said?
That's what she said.
Yeah.
And you remember it. You were in the courtroom when she said it.
Mm-hmm. She's written 3 books, and each time she said something different.
Mm-hmm.
Each time.
Did you tie him up?
Did I?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we came down from Abilene. And
Let's stay in Los Angeles, August 10, 1969.
there was a hole in the wall gang there.
Why don't you want to talk about it, Charles? Why don't you want to?
Because I'm an outlaw, and I go so far, and then that's all you know.
And if you
That's
did,
like asking Jesse James.
and if
"Did you
and
shoot somebody?"
if, as others have written and as others have testified and as the media has reported, you did that,
Yeah.
and you sent your friends back in to do the deed. Aren't you a coward?
My friends back in to do the terrible deed.
Doesn't
The
that make you?
wicked deed. Ta-da. Did we have the castle there with the vampires and the Frankenstein and the bugs and lizards dying in the deserts?
The police slowly arrested each member from the gang, until they caught Manson himself. The murderers and members didn't deny the killings, and they admitted to them with a smile and a happy face, saying they were proud and would do it again. Since they all confessed, the police had a very easy job to send them to prison. The trial began June 15, 1970. The prosecution's main witness was Kasabian, who, along with Manson, Atkins, and Krenwinkel, had been charged with 7 counts of murder and 1 of conspiracy. Since Kasabian, by all accounts, had not participated in the killings, she was granted immunity in exchange for testimony that detailed the nights of the crimes. Originally, a deal had been made with Atkins in which the prosecution agreed not to seek the death penalty against her in exchange for her grand jury testimony on which the indictments were secured. Once Atkins repudiated that testimony, the deal was withdrawn. Because Van Houten had participated only in the LaBianca killings, she was charged with 2 counts of murder and 1 of conspiracy. Originally, Judge William Keene had reluctantly granted Manson permission to act as his own attorney. Because of Manson's conduct, including violations of a gag order and submission of outlandish and nonsensical pretrial motions, the permission was withdrawn before the trial's start. The prosecution argued the triggering of Helter Skelter was Manson's main motive. The crime scene's Bloody White Album references Pig, Rise, Helter Skelter, were correlated with testimony about Manson predictions that the murders blacks would commit at the outset of Helter Skelter would involve the writing of pigs on walls in victims' blood. During the trial, family members loitered near the entrances and corridors of the courthouse. To keep them out of the courtroom proper, the prosecution subpoenaed them as prospective witnesses, who would not be able to enter while others were testifying.
Do we have the water that's dying and the whales are being killed and the seals are
Here
dying?
we go again. Lay it off on somebody else. Let's
Well,
point to all the other injustices.
I'm in the world all by myself?
Yeah, on this one you are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Many members of the Manson family are still alive today, rotting in prison. Most of them have already died, due to natural causes or other private reasons, such as prison living standards. What these people did is unforgivable, and no matter what they say, they did what they did, and that will never be forgotten. Even though some people are convinced that Manson never actually murdered someone himself, there's no point in denying the fact that he manipulated these pair of losers and unwanted idiots, and turned them into bloodthirsty living animals. In my personal opinion, Manson's followers are probably even worse than Manson, as they were not only the ones that committed these atrocities, but the ones that were proud of their actions.
Was okay, if that's the way you see it for you.
You've never talked about this before, but I'm going to make it. I'm going to try it one more time. Just pull
now,
the cards out.
now,
you can see them when I'm
You
finished.
got a pistol on you?
No, sir. They wouldn't let me in here if I had a pistol. You know that as well as I do. So why even ask the question? Okay.
Well, I just thought you might not like what I've done. You want to do something about it.
I don't much care for what you've done.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't. How do you feel
Yeah.
about that? A lot
Well-
of people think you're a monster, Charles. How do you
Yeah,
feel?
they think you're a monster because you reflect this news media on me. Cult leader. I never had long hair before I got busted. I never had a beard before I got busted. I went to shave and the guy said, no, you can't shave. And I said, I need a razor to shave. He said, no, you can't shave. I said, let me get a haircut. He said, no, we don't want you to change your appearance. They said I had a great family and I was the following and leaders and all that. There was no followers and leaders, a bunch of kids out the ranch playing. To me,
Playing at what?
playing and living.
Do you miss women?
Certainly. My goodness. Yeah, damn right. Yeah.
What do you think of women?
Oh, I like them. Yeah, they're nice. If they're put together well and everything, and they're soft and spongy, yeah, they're nice. As long as they keep their mouth shut and do what they're supposed to do,
Why do you say that?
because that's what a woman's supposed to do.
Keep her mouth shut and do what she's supposed to do?
Sure.
And besides the son that you had in your marriage, you've got, what, 4 other children somewhere?
I don't think I've been responsible for as much as you people want to lay on me.
All right, somewhere out there, somewhere, there's at least one son that we know of that's your child, who's probably about 25 or 26 years old. You talk to that kid. What are you going to say to him?
You got to catch it on your own, boy. Train's hard. The road's rough.
And that's it.
That's all I knew. That's all anyone ever told me.
All right.
And you want to hear something?
Yeah?
He'll do it better than me.
Do what?
Whatever he does, he'll do it a little better. Kids do, don't they?
Sometimes.
Yeah, that's what makes them such a gas. They always seem to get through.
How were you in school? I hear that you weren't too good, but maybe I heard wrong.
Depends on which school. I did very well in reform school.
Yeah.
I did good in every place that I was ever told to do good in. I've been an outlaw ever since I was born. I went to reform school when I was about 10, and I learned to box and cry, and I learned to do all the things that you do in reform school. Then I went to, I escaped there a bunch of times, and I went to prison, and I learned everything that you do in prison. And I talked to all the guys and asked them everything they knew. And they told me all the things they knew. And then I went to the end of it, and then the old man would be ready to die, and he'd say, well, son, sincerity is the best gimmick, remember that. And I said, all right, be sincere, that'll win it. He said, that's it. Sincerity and honesty, he said, will do it. It'll trick them every time. I said, well, sincere and honesty, I never tried that. I tried everything else, but maybe I'll try sincere and honesty. So then I looked in the book, and it says, the wages of sin is death. Now I figured, well, I don't want to die, so maybe I have been sinful here. Maybe I am wrong. Maybe I'll take a look at my life and say, well, I'm going to change it and start all over. You know, and I know I go to God and I say, hey, man, you're going to forgive me? And he's going to say, what do? You forgive you? I mean, what'd you come to me for? Forgive yourself, man. Don't be bothering me.
How do you feel about spending the rest of your life in prison?
Well, we're all our own prisons. We each are our own wardens, and we do our own times. We get stuck in our own little trips, and we kind of judge ourselves the way we do. You know, I can't judge nobody else. The best thing I can do is try to judge myself and live with that.
Let's assume that one day you were paroled. Let's just...
Paroled?
Well, let's just make believe. Do you ever think you will be?
Yeah, do I ever think I will be? Well, I've never been paroled before. I went up to the board, and they said I was incorrigible. And not only was I incorrigible, but that I'd never grow up. And I kind of agreed with them.
If you got out tomorrow, do you have any scores to settle on the outside?
Scores? Do I have any scores out there? And we're making believe, right? Mm-hmm. Well, I'll tell you, buddy. Well, I don't rightly know. I'm stupid to the point to where I'm not really sure.
Believe it or not, there are a lot of people on the outside that think about the possibility of you coming out of here, and they're genuinely scared of you.
Oh, boy, I might just make dust. Everything. Terrible. One little guy. Terrible. Ooh. Boy, how insecure are we as human beings? Put all our fear on one little guy. You're afraid to let him out. He might break all the toys.
Why do you say little guy?
Because I'm not the guy you trying to make out of me. That's not me. I don't know what my way is. Everybody keeps telling me I got all these things. So I read the other day where I had magical powers, and I told everybody in the chapel, I said, zap, 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 zap. I said, where's my magical powers? Well, you can't read, you can't believe what you read in the press. I can get no magical powers, mystical trips, and all that kind of crap. Yeah, it's kind of silly. Yeah, I'm getting witches and devils, and one guy come up and said, I heard you said you were Jesus. I said, no, man, I ain't said nothing. He said, I'm glad. He said, I'm damn glad. I said, why? He said, I know you ain't him. I said, how do you know? He said, because I am. I said, okay. But I mean, you know, I've been in the nut ward for 10 years, so you can't expect me to rationally take this thing serious.